Welcome to episode 51 of the Adam Makes Beer Industry Pro podcast. Today, I'm excited to be chatting with Matt Therrien of Lake Ann Brewing in Lake Ann, Michigan. Before we get rolling, let me give a shout out to a few of our fantastic sponsors that make content like this possible. Starting a brewery is a big step. Blickman Engineering is here to help. Since 2006, they've equipped hundreds of nano breweries for success. Their new 3.5 barrel Pro Surface electric brewing system cuts maintenance and saves at least 30 minutes per brew with powerful under kettle heating. From 1 to 15 barrel brew houses to keg washers and grain mills, Blickman has what you need. Ready to go pro? Contact Phil or Tom at ProSeries at blickmanengineering.com. Blickman Engineering is a proud sponsor of this channel and loves to help brewers at every stage of the journey. For those of you that might not know, depending on when you're listening to this, we are rolling up on CBC. And if you're interested in a little hot CBC news, heading to CBC in Indy this month, the Greater Lafayette area breweries have something exciting for you. It's time to explore and win a scavenger-style raffle where you'll discover amazing craft beer and have a chance to score big prizes like a $1,000 Blickman gift card, swag, supplies, more. Swing by the Blickman Engineering headquarters, April 26th to the 28th. Grab your swag bag and get your first raffle ticket. Then visit participating breweries to collect more tickets and boost your chance of winning. Once you've got your tickets, drop them off at the Blickman booth, which is number 701 at CBC. That would be April 29th through May 1st for a shot at the ultimate prize package. Make sure to follow Blickman Engineering on Facebook, Instagram, and X, as all details will be dropping soon. I think those are all the details, though, people. Okay? Sip, explore, and win. Let's make this CBC one to remember. Tracking and managing the financial health of your brewery is a primary pillar of success. Check out my boy David Lentz at Brewed Fiscally. This man has the industry experience and skills you need so you can focus on growing your business. Bookkeeping, fractional CFO support, financial management system design, business plan review, hit up your boy. Check him out at brewedfiscally.com or shoot him an email at david@brewedfiscally.com. He's good people. As I mentioned before, I am talking with an old brewing buddy from back in the day in Michigan. I'm talking to Matt Therrien from Lake Ann today. Matt, how you doing?
I'm good, Adam. How are you?
Doing well, man. This was a fun one, and I have to apologize. Sometimes my scheduling skills are can lack a little bit. So we've been kicking around doing one of these podcasts for a little while, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the things that I've always appreciated about your approach to the whole thing is I think you bring a really savvy, keep it simple approach to brewery business models, which I think is awesome. It also is a kick for me because I was kind of coming up on the pro side when you were planning your brewery. I remember hanging out at some of the homebrew fests and whatnot. So this is a fun one. The other thing is I love the kind of, well, as you said, unscripted, unrehearsed kind of talking head videos that you do on Facebook. And I don't know. So that's when I started seeing those videos, that's when I said to myself, I need to talk to Matt on this podcast. So
very unscripted.
Yeah.
Very.
Well, I do think that's part of it, right? And I think so often, marketing, social marketing is it can be difficult, but I think sometimes the thing people forget is you actually just have to be you. Like, I'm aware that the pictures of myself that I use with that big dumb smile on my face, some people probably look at that and say, there is not a chance in hell that I'm going to click on this and listen to this guy talk to me about brewing because he looks dumb. But I think those pictures are funny. And so at a certain point, like you just have to be yourself. And for me, I can kind of be silly, whatever. And so I just ran with that stuff because it made me laugh. And one of the things I like about what you do is it's just, you being you, talking about what's going on at the brewery.
Yeah, that's accurate. I think I spoke to you earlier, but talking about those videos kind of started during COVID when we were shut down and we'd sell growlers out the window all day. And so on a Saturday, we'd be done selling about 7 o'clock. And then I'd go back and sit at the bar, and I would get my phone on Facebook Live, and I would pop it up against a beer glass, and I would talk, sometimes for 2 hours. And I'd call people on the phone, on the cordless phone. I'd call my cousin Scooter, and we'd talk.
Of course, his name is Scooter.
Yeah, and we would be literally talking about just like old stories, like that happened in our lives. And the bar for entertainment at that time during COVID, I mean, we're talking April 2020. The bar was so low that people would watch anything. And so that's where I cut my teeth on those skills of just blathering on. And
well, I'm still dependent on that low bar. That's something that it's a key part of what I have going on here.
So a funny thing is, so we're having our 10-year anniversary this year in June, and
congratulations, man.
A tagline that I came up with prior to us opening, and this line was somewhat developed with a good friend of mine. And there's still some question on who exactly came up with it. But the line was lowering expectations 1 pint at a time. And people we opened with that, right? Like we opened saying this probably ain't gonna be that great. And people loved the line. They just loved it. Yeah. We've got it on our t-shirts. And actually I was just discussing with my wife last night about some 10-year anniversary t-shirts and stuff like that. And she's like, well, I think we have to have it's something like 10 years of lowering expectations or something like that. But I'm a big fan of lowering expectations because when you don't expect much, people are usually much more pleased. And I remember I had a meeting with a marketing guy early on, and he was like, I just feel like this place is so great, but he goes, people don't really know it. They don't, and he had all these little ideas he'd run by me. And I said, and he was a friend as socially as well. And I said, listen, I don't want one person walking through the door here for the first time thinking that this is going to be good. And he looked at me and he's like, what? And I'm like, look, if they think it's going to be good, it's probably only going to go downhill for them, or if it is what they expect, then it's like, meh. I'm like, but if you walk into this, like in our place is a old building, and it's in a foreclosed old cafe type of thing. And we made the best, but I mean, we have ceilings. I'm 5'7" and I can touch the ceiling. Okay. It's short. So, I mean, it's surprising they didn't just tear the thing down. So when people walk in, I want them to, have a beer and be like, hey, this is actually really good. That's the attitude I want, because then they're pleasantly surprised,
it is an interesting thing because, and it just isn't this in particular, but I do think that there's some stuff around craft beer that's interesting. So I make one silly beer meme a day on Instagram. And primarily it's just a way, jokes are the, funny material gets shared most readily online. And so sometimes it's just a way of getting what I'm doing on Instagram in front of different eyes, right? But I posted one about Pliny the Elder from Russian River. And I've done this a few times where I reference like some of the holy grail beers for like when I was first coming up, right? They're like, oh man, I wish I could get out there and drink Pliny fresh on tap or X, Y, and Z, right? It's always so funny to me how just because something has been around for a while, the the amount people are allowed to like it starts declining. You know what I mean? And it was like, well, it's just not one of those. I mean, I think on some level, like, I think Pliny did like really change the game of what was going on. I mean, it kind of is the beginning of that double IPA style. And it doesn't mean that it's forever going to be the greatest iteration of that thing, but there needs to be some level of respect for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think take Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, where still an absolutely fantastic beer, but when that came out, I mean, that was hoppy, and that was that was a big thing. Like, I mean, Ken Grossman's a true pioneer, and and then hop creep, and just more of everything. Went in, and then all of a sudden this beer that you thought was like cutting edge isn't as much. And then you feel like that beer changed. That beer didn't change. You changed, and the market changed, and what people are doing changed. You hope we're brewing better beer today than we were brewing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And, but yeah, you get those holy grail beers where I've heard so much about this. You're going to be disappointed. Yeah. You're likely going to be disappointed. I mean, I was in Vermont, and I had a beer that was a famous beer a year and a half ago. And I'm like, I mean, if we had this on tap, I wouldn't be that impressed.
Sure. And it's one of those expectation things. You know what I mean? It can definitely play a role like that. So, well, let's dip in and talk about your path into the industry, because I don't think you went like LeBron James style straight from high school to the pros. So, what was the in between? What was the in between for you?
So I started brewing pre-internet. I started brewing, I think, in 95. I don't know, maybe the internet was around. I didn't have it. Was making, just at my parents' house, making some terrible beer, and was not good. And then I moved to Northern Michigan in the late 90s and attempted to do it a little bit more. Still, I never really did all the research. So like standardization, stuff like that, I never got to that chapter. So... surprisingly, the stuff was drinkable even without, using any of that stuff. But then got back out of it a little bit. And then my buddy Ben started doing all grain brewing and just making some really quality beer. And that was kind of when I started tasting it. I'm like, yeah, maybe I want to do this. I think I want to get back into it again. So I went in both feet in at that point. Started selling homebrew supplies from my house. I was always like every homebrewer, you're trying to find the world's cheapest way to do everything. So my way to do it was to buy pallets of grain and then sell them to other homebrewers. And then, I was basically brewing for free.
Yeah.
So, and I had all these scams going for like trying to get country malt to sell to a dude. I'm like, well, yeah, we've got and I think I was using my cousin's store as an address. It was a whole thing. And like, and I'm not
by the way, this all tracks from some other conversations that we're saying. I find this all believable.
So yeah, I'm using like their DBA or something. And I'm like, no, yeah, we're a brewer. Like, yeah, I don't know what I was telling, but so we're getting pallets delivered and stuff, and did that for a couple of years. So by doing that, and I was homebrewing, you'd meet it was very interesting. So you'd be meeting other homebrewers that would come to your house to pick up grain, right? Homebrewers are weird people. It's not like someone to come pick up a VCR that you got on Marketplace or something. It's a homebrewer. So as soon as they come in, hey, how you doing? I'm pretty good. So what? Oh, that's your setup. All right. Because it's in the garage, whatever. Oh man, what? And they're all of a sudden they pull a bottle out of their pocket. Yeah, you want to try this? And so next thing you know, I tell the wife I'm going out in the garage to just this guy, he'll be gone in 5 minutes. 2 hours later, we're in there drinking beer, talking about home brewing. which is just standard for home brewers, right?
Yeah.
And so did that, and then like every home brewer, the idea, well, I think I might be able to do this. Like, I don't know why every time somebody cooks a hamburger and it tastes good, they don't want to start a restaurant, right? But when you're a home brewer,
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
I think my buddy tasted this hamburger. He thinks I should open a place,
Yeah.
But if you're a home brewer, you're picturing it. So I looked at a few different things, all of which in hindsight were terrible ideas. And this cafe was in our little hometown here of Lake Ann, was foreclosed on and empty, just empty. Tumbleweeds blowing through the street of Lake Ann. And I looked at it and I'm like, there's no way. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. A year later, I mean, you want to talk about a calm real estate market. A year later, I went back and looked at this building again.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe if we got it so unbelievably cheap that I could just move my homebrew stuff into this building and we'll just open for 2 days a week or something.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So how big is that building?
Oh, the building's probably 2,000 square foot altogether, tap room and brewery.
Really?
Yeah, it's not big. And
for sure.
So we end up buying the building, and I'm gonna just do the world's cheapest brew system in this building. So this is like 2014.
Yeah.
And in my own town, I live in this town. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, well, maybe we should just do like a 3.5 barrel or something. And we should actually do like a real, like something, And I'm outside working, and I'm like, gosh, there's a lot of traffic here. There's a lot of people, a lot of interest. And I'm like, I think if we do anything less than a 7 barrel, we're going to be making a huge mistake.
Sure.
So essentially, then I had to go to my wife and tell her, hey, I think we're going to be spending more money than I originally thought. And her vote of confidence was, well, just do whatever you got to do to get this thing going. And so we ended up with a 7 barrel system that we can squeeze out like 8.5 out of. And, just glycol chillers or glycol line fermenters. And then we had 6 serving tanks in a walk-in. And essentially we just grew into that system, and still works great for, to 500-600 barrels. No problem,
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And 500-600 barrels all on premise, correct?
Yeah, we do a very, very little distribution. A few kegs.
Love it. Good for you.
3%. 3%. Trying to lower that.
Yeah, it is one of those things, and I do understand when people want to do some distro, or I understand there's different ideas behind it, but I'm just talking just as a brewer. It's one less thing I have to think about. I know I can get a beer package, whether that be into kegs or into a serving tank, and then it's done. Right? It's one of those things. It's other things you don't have to juggle. So that is just speaking selfishly as a brewer, even though I think that there are some pluses to it on the operation side as well.
Well, I originally, like everybody, me, I guess less of which, but always thought, well, where can we expand what we're doing? How can we make more money? And I always did the math, some in my head, some on my phone. And I never, ever came up with the conclusion that I want to do distribution. Like, I don't know how everybody else's iPhone works, but mine, those numbers were so bad. And like, I only did keg numbers, right? So your keg is going to be your highest profit margin.
Yeah.
And even without, having a distributor, I just could never cross that bridge. I was just like, gosh, that's really terrible.
Well, and I mean, that's the whole thing, and I've thought back to, different breweries I've worked at. I've seen, sometimes you can tell things are in trouble, early on, I didn't know, but, as you get a few years under your belt, you start looking around and you walk into a place and you're like, wow, they're buying things that they're not using or barely use. And when they do use it, it doesn't generate profit. And yeah, I'm much more of a fan of actually, you know, if you are going to be expanding, actually have, potentially needs that aren't being met, certain things like that before you start, kind of going off the deep end with some of that stuff.
Well, I think one thing that people don't run through in their head is, you think about, well, if we get all this, get more equipment or get, more space, we can start distributing, or putting more beer out or this or that or whatever, packaging. And the math I always would equate to is, okay, how much would selling 100 pints a week generate in actual dollars
Mm-hmm.
versus whatever else you want to do? Figure
Mm-hmm.
out how to generate more high profit items because it's so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just so much easier. And so, if the way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, but you think about that concept and like, okay, well, how can we move more product out of here? Because, okay, so, and I don't know these numbers. You'd probably be able to tell more. But okay, if I sell a case of packaged product at Meijer,
Mm-hmm.
your local grocery store, or whatever, okay, what does that equate to? How much I make on one pint, and how much do I make on a case versus a pint? There's a lot of work that goes into making a case of beer,
Mm-hmm.
and in many cases, and people don't think about this, but if tipped staff are pouring that beer and handing it across the bar, there's not even really a labor factor in that, so those are the kind of things I think about.
Sure. Well, that all makes sense. Let's start rolling into things here a little bit when it comes to this discussion, kind of around operations, but I think maybe more appropriately, it would be kind of a discussion of operations and planning and operations.
Sure.
So let's kind of dip into that side of it. You did talk briefly about, finding a small building that you feel as if would work for your area. So let's just dip into kind of setting up and the structure, the planning for Lake Ann Brewing.
I think when you get into the planning for what we did, it's important to understand my background. And my background was construction. My background was real estate. I'd done a lot of different things with real estate. We'd had some rental business, residential rental business and stuff like that. So I had a lot of experience purchasing real estate, and I had a lot of experience in the construction realm. So those are both probably more important than knowing a whole lot about brewing when you're opening a brewery, because interestingly, if you're a brewer and you open a brewery, if you are successful, you're probably not going to be brewing after about a year. You're going to be running everything, right? It's a good skill set to know because it's you never know when you got to go back. But so this building was for sale, and the bank wanted, I think, $119,000, and this is like 2013. So I look at the building, and it's kind of a wreck, but it had a restaurant right next door, 12 feet away from it to the north, and this was an old cafe. So the restaurant component next to us was very important because I never had any interest in doing food. So I thought, well, if we opened a brewery, the restaurant could handle all the food operation, and we wouldn't have to deal with that at all. So I go, and the bank lowers their price to $99,000 on this thing. And so I call the real estate agent, and I says, hey, I'd like to make an offer. And he says, let me come to you. I'll drive up there and we'll do it. And I says, it's going to be a terrible offer. It's going to be a very bad offer. And I says, I'd rather come to you because I think if you come to me and I give you this offer, you're going to be pissed off of the gas you wasted to get here. He goes, oh, there's no such thing as a bad offer. So I go to his office, and he's an older guy, longtime local guy, whatever, probably in his 70s. And we get there, and I do all the stuff. We're doing all the stuff for the paperwork and everything. I didn't tell him the price yet. So mind you, they asked $99,000. And so I said, he goes, all right, we get everything done, all the I's dotted, T's crossed. He goes, what's your price? I says, $15,000. And he goes, whoa. That's about as close to a bad offer as you're going to get. And I'm like, well, that's what I think it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
So I wait for the bank answers back. I'm thinking they're just going to tell me to get screwed. They counter with 85. I'm like, we're in the hunt.
Yeah.
So I counter with 18. True story. I counter with 18,000, and I'm like, this is really going to get them upset. They counter back with 65. And I'm like, I told my wife, I'm like, I'm getting this thing for 25 grand. I know it. So at that point, it was kind of, we were kind of at a standoff, and they were not moving any further.
Yeah.
And I was stupid. I don't know why I was messing around. Like, I was just messing around, playing with fire. Shouldn't have been messing. But my dad ended up getting sick, and the last offer was like in October. My dad got sick, and he passed away in February of 2014. And so right after that, I got back into the hunt on this building. I mean, it just sat there. Nobody wanted this thing.
Yeah.
We settled on $55,000,
Yeah.
and we got a continuation of use through the village. So basically, just do whatever you want. The building was way better. Everything was better than I thought it would be. Electrical, just everything, every point we got into was not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And so we ended up putting in a 7-barrel brewery, bought a brand new brew system. It was a stout brew system, direct fire, all separate kettles, because we were in a small space for our brew house. I mean, it's not huge. 4 fermenters, 6 serving tanks, and as big of a walk-in cooler as we could fit.
Is that walk-in cooler outside or inside?
The walk-in cooler is inside a part of the building that, I don't know what they did. They built like a little roof over a thing. So we just kind of fit this thing in there. But it was like 12 by 14 or something like that, walk-in. And we fit everything in there, and trench drains and 3-compartment sink in the brew house. I mean, we had everything we needed. Garage door we put in, everything. And so we were, I want to say, if I had to guess, because I didn't keep a great record, but we were in it for about 125 for the brewing equipment, and probably equal for the renovations of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So, we didn't have any partners. We didn't have any investors.
Amen.
We borrowed the money. And so it's just my wife and myself. Talk about having no business plan. So we literally didn't, because we just borrowed against our house. So we didn't even have to explain ourselves to anybody.
Yeah.
So people ask, well, what's the business plan? I says, well, we're going to make beer and sell it.
Yeah.
And all business plans are all BS after that anyway, right? Because they projections, and we've already, people always go, oh yeah, well, back in the day, they'd say, oh, well, we already surpassed our projections for next year. I'm like, you pulled those numbers out of your rear end. What? It didn't mean anything, But so we get, and at that time, I was staying home with our 3 kids while I was doing this project. It was interesting. My wife was working at the hospital. Of course, we had the big recession of 08, 09, and this is still, commercial real estate was still in the toilet. So we're about a month out from opening in May of 2015. And my wife said she took a week off to figure out, she was an accountant. And so she took a week off to figure out POS stuff and all that. And she looks at me seriously, and she goes, how are we going to do this with 3 kids? And I'm still working. And I go, I don't know. I don't know. We didn't really think about that. And she goes, well, she says, why don't she goes, I'll put in my 4 weeks at work. I'll quit. She goes, we'll open for the summer. And if this thing's a bomb, I'll just get a job in September.
Yeah.
That was her vote of confidence. If this is a bomb.
That's a good woman, though, man. That's a good wife. That's a good wife.
Was not, she'd worked there 14 years. She was absolutely not rattled. And she's real high strung too, but absolutely totally comfortable with just I'll just quit. and we'll figure this out. So
Uh-huh.
we opened June 15th, 2015.
Uh-huh.
I had zero experience as far as the service industry. When we opened, I had 6 nieces that
Hmm.
all worked for us when we opened,
Okay.
all from the ages of like 16 to 26. And they
Yeah.
all had worked in the service industry.
Nice.
So that was helpful because we had built-in staff. To this day, everybody thinks that everybody that works at our place is all my relatives.
For sure.
Like everybody. So, well, old habits are hard to die. But I had no idea what we were doing. Like
Yeah.
the background of construction was, I think, helpful because you kind of facilitate and figure stuff out on the fly. But just people want a beer and they want it quick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
service industry. If you figure that
Mm-hmm.
out, that's pretty good. But yeah, so that was it. She quit the job. She didn't go back. And it was, obviously no business plan at all. But we were open about 2 weeks, and I said to my wife, I says, I think this will work.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
literally the whole thing.
Well, something you mentioned that stands out. Well, there's multiple things, and your situation has some outliers in it. One, in the fact that that's the way that you pitched it. That's the way you approach buying that building. You know what I mean? And you got a
Right.
smoking deal. Timing plays into that. Approach plays into that as well. Another thing that you mentioned, among many, but having somebody with the actual accounting skills
Huge.
attached,
Huge.
being your wife, obviously, you obviously heard me do my live read for Brewed Fiscally. That David he's a buddy of mine. He used to work at Saucy in Cleveland, a brewery group up there. Loves the industry, knows what he's doing. He's done a lot of stuff, and I like being able to recommend people to him, because so many people the wheels are going to fall off as soon as they hit the road, because they didn't have the financial side figured out or didn't know how to maintain the financial side. It's a big deal.
Yep, it's huge.
And it's huge. It's huge. That's really it's a huge benefit to be able to have, obviously your wife with those skills. That's a big deal.
Yeah, because then payroll was not a issue. I mean, she understood those things. Sometimes though, an accountant can only tell you where all the money went, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
just because somebody is in the accounting field doesn't necessarily mean they have a good long-term financial strategy as far
Mm-hmm.
as that discipline and optimism is not a business plan, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's not everything should be good. And like you'll look at some numbers or some rent or whatever people, get themselves on the hook for. And you're like, oh my God. I mean, that's a nut right there. And so, starting and so much of what, we did, luck is where, preparation meets opportunity, right? But we had some low hanging fruit. We opened in a town that hadn't had a bar in 100 years. So, like, you open and there's no bar in town, well, automatically you're the place. And there's no real room for one commercially.
Yeah.
There's just not.
So tell me about Lake Ann a little bit. So, like, is it, I grew up in a town with, or nearby me, that was basically a church and a post office.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Is it that small of a town?
Well,
I think you're near the lake, correct?
So Lake Ann's a village that has about 267 people in it.
Okay.
It's a very small village, but it's got a general store, a beach, an insurance agency, a post office, a park right across from the brewery, an ice cream store to the south of the brewery, a restaurant to the north of the brewery, a bank right behind the brewery. It's kind of it's a bedroom community of Traverse City. And so we're 12 miles from Traverse City, center of Traverse City.
Mm-hmm.
We are about halfway between Traverse City and Sleeping Bear Dunes. But we're not on like a main road to go there. So you have to seek us out. While we're a 267 person village, we're surrounded by Elmira Township, which is about 4,000 people. And then you go 1 mile to our east into Long Lake Township, and that's probably about 9,000 people. We've got in our township, a 6 by 6 mile area, we've got 36 named lakes. So there's tons of lakes. So while we have a good local population year round, we get a big inundation of visitors and people with summer homes, seasonal people too.
So you mentioned kind of 500-600 barrels of beer. I mean, what if you had to rough it out? What percentage of that happens during the nice weather up there? Assuming you believe that summer is
nice, and it snowed this morning.
Yeah.
as I look outside, the sun is just starting to shine now. But I would say half of our business comes from June, July, August, September.
For sure.
And then the other half. I mean, we make money in the off season, but the June, July, August, September are the best. We have a huge outdoor space that we started with 6 picnic tables out back, and now we have seating for probably about 300.
No kidding.
We do.
How much property is attached that you have access to?
Not a lot. It is. We make use of every square inch.
Yeah.
We have to keep a lot of backstock of grain and our logo wear. Anything has to be off-site. We have no space on-site. We use every square inch of it. So we're big into live music. We started the first summer we opened. I mean, we started doing live music on Tuesday nights. Just a little thing, and that developed into now. We do in the good weather, from June to August anyway, we do 7 shows a week. So we do Tuesday through Saturday, and then we do a 3 o'clock and a 7 o'clock show on Friday and Saturday. So and we have probably the most comprehensive music calendar in Northwest Michigan for live music.
Yeah, that's a lot of music, man.
It is.
That's a lot of music. And it's interesting to me because I've heard different takes on live music because, obviously there's different money. There can be different money going out. You could be paying the band, or you can do kind of, like open mic stuff. By the way, Brian M is praising your spot. He said it's a cool spot. He's been there a few times. Appreciate that, Brian.
Thanks, Brian M. Is he running from the cops or something? Why is it just M?
Well, it's the internet. I also had this comment from somebody the other day. So the last time I did a live stream, I was joking about, so CBC is coming up, and I have some T-shirts that say Adam Makes Beer on it. Okay. I want to be able to wear those things at CBC. Well, I have gained weight over the winter, and now I'm realizing I don't want to have to buy new branded gear to represent myself at CBC. So I said, I'm on a full UFC style weight.
Wow.
And it's a joke, right? I mean, the whole thing's a joke, right? So anyways, somebody was like, this is the dumbest thing I've seen all day. All you're doing is losing water, and as soon as you hydrate, you're going to gain all the weight back. And that comment came from It Burns When I Pee. That was his username. So people take different. So Brian M is actually very good and respectable.
Gotcha.
As opposed to getting comments from somebody like It Burns When I Pee.
Well,
so I always like to respond to those people by putting Mr. or Miss in front of their name and then using their name. So anyways, before we go too far afield here, digging into this music thing. So I've heard some people say, well, it can lose money. It can be tricky. What are the ways that you've been successful with managing live music at your place?
Well, there's a couple different things. So when we started doing music on a Tuesday, right? And I was an amateur musician, still very amateur,
Okay.
but I played around with some guys at the open mic that was local to our area, and I knew a lot of musicians, going in. So
what do you play, by the way?
Guitar.
Nice.
Guitar. It was nothing special. So
sure.
25 years, and I'm still not very good. Maybe 30 years. 30 years. And I like somebody who's been playing for like 4 months would be as good as I
am. For sure.
So, so we started really small. I mean, I think I was paying these guys, I asked my one guy, I'm like, what would it cost to have you come? And I have, he's just going to stand in the corner and play. And
sure.
He's like, I don't know, if I make $20 an hour, I'm happy, and drink a couple beers. So it was like $60. And at that point, I'm like, $60, geez, all right, whatever. So it was very incremental. But the advice I would give anybody who ventures into live music is to dabble. Pick a night, and if you've already been, you already have sales, so you have year-over-year numbers. Pick a night and see what it does to your sales. That's a a guy with a guitar, maybe a couple $100 you got to put out to, or maybe you got somebody who'll work with you and be like, hey, let's just see how this works. See what it does to your sales. Does it, breaking even is not an option. Like, you're not doing it to break even. Because if breaking even, you can stay home to break even. So if it's not increasing sales to a point where you're like, okay, and it's not going to be gangbusters right away, but see where it moves those numbers and then be consistent. A lot of people will be like, well, I'm going to get this guy and he draws really good and whatever. Well, great, but maybe it's an off night, or maybe if you don't publicize it, it's not going to be great, or maybe you're putting out too much money and it's never going to work if you put out too much money. And so, just starting small incrementally, it's no different than advertising. If you advertise, doing advertising one time, well, what's that going to do, right? It has to be just a drop, plop, 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 plop. And you start it, you see what it does. Okay, well, maybe, our live music following on a Wednesday night or something has increased sales or whatever. Okay, maybe we can increase the talent a little bit, and it's not an overnight thing. The people who do it overnight, they start a huge music program, they get their head taken off. And they're never sure, because it wasn't incremental, what did it to them. If you're brewing and you've got a great pale ale recipe, but you want to tweak it, you don't tweak 3 different things. Well, I'm going to switch the yeast, I'm going to switch the grain and the hops, and then it sucks. Well, you don't know what made it suck. So just adding one variable at a time. And what we started doing after a couple of years in, we Stool Shorts Brewing up in Bel Air always had what they called an honor cover. And the honor cover originally, when they started, was actually to pay for the band. Like, people threw in money and that's what the band got. Well, after a while, they were doing well and then had guarantees for the bands and everything else. I wanted to find a mechanism that we could get the band more money, but if your only way to pay for the band is through people drinking beer, and that's it for us, right? People don't always pay the freight in product, but people like to come see live music. So we started an honor cover program of our own, but how that works is we have a line on the credit card slip so they can put something there, or they got couple different buckets on site. And what we do is we add up all that when the music's done, we split that with them. So if a band's guarantee was $600 and $600 came into the honor cover, then they would get $300 and we'd hold back $300 against the $600. So our cost was $300. So the better the music, the more people put in. The more engaged people are, the more people put in. The better known that draws a better crowd, the more people put in, the less it costs us. So if we get a band that nobody cares about and it doesn't draw very many people, well, that doesn't put a whole lot of money in that on our cover. So the worse the band does, the more they cost us. So that's been a huge thing for both the musicians and us, because it definitely increases their pay, and it decreases the cost of the program.
Sure. That's interesting. So do you have like a pretty good like stable of like musicians around that area?
Oh yeah. We have
Nice.
we have a ton of local musicians, almost to a point where we bring in some out of town musicians, but that's more for novelty. We have musicians that, okay, this group comes up from Detroit every year, they play one show or something, and every year we bring them up, and they, after several years they have a following, and it's a good thing. So so that's no different than advertising, though. It just brings people there to consume product, and you find out there's some musicians that bring a better crowd for drinking than others.
So I do like that notion of consistent and incremental, right? I think that makes a lot of sense, and it is difficult, because for somebody that obviously does some stuff on the marketing side, it can be tough to stick with it when you're doing stuff and you're not getting necessarily the return that you think can be out there for it. But there is definitely something to the consistency side of the puzzle. So between checking show notes and if you can just refresh my memory, how many days a week are you guys doing music?
So we do so I guess I'd say this, we're only open 5 days. So we're open Tuesday through Saturday. We've been that way since we started.
Awesome.
So that is, our time frame. So if we sell 500 or 600 barrels of beer or whatever a year, it's in 250 days. It's not, we have a couple of those Sunday, Mondays that we are open in the course of a year, but not many. We do 5 days all summer for live music. So Tuesday through Saturday, and then 7 shows though.
What has been some of the benefits of only being in operation 5 days a week? Because that is because I've talked about having my own place throughout the time. Like you said, everybody that makes beer does consider that. What was your gut behind 5 days a week?
When I was trying to talk my wife into us making an offer on the building, which I had to take her out for a dinner, and I had to lay out this plan. And she's just looking at me skeptically across the table for about half an hour.
Yes.
And at that time, I was interested in getting chickens.
Okay.
So this has nothing to do with anything, right?
Sure.
So I just wanted to get chickens. And my wife grew up in the farming space and was no fan of chickens. And at the time, we had 3 small children.
Yeah.
And she reluctantly agrees that we can make an offer on this building. And she says, under 2 conditions: we're closed on Sundays, and we're not getting chickens. Like,
I like how she weaved the chicken.
Yeah, right. Just threw the chickens as a throwaway. And I'm like, all right, I can live with that. And so first of all, had we been open 7 days when we started, I think I would have just died. Like, I was so stressed. And so we didn't do that, but it really gave us some breathing time to just, be able to spend family time, recharge, and then on Tuesday, we'd get back at it. And interestingly, Tuesday nights in Lake Ann, there is a classic car show that happens out front of our brewery.
Nice.
Guys bring in all these classic cars and they sit out at the park and they hang out from like 5 to 7 or something at night.
Yeah.
Consequently, like 2 years into us being open, we had built a big outdoor stage and stuff. And we started having a local band play, a 3-piece band play on Tuesday nights. And they would play every Tuesday all summer long. Well, Tuesday ended up just being this like unbelievable carnival type atmosphere in Lake Ann because we were back open for the week on Tuesday. And so you'd go on Tuesday and it's jam packed. To this day, Tuesday nights, people walking around the streets and it's just like a carnival atmosphere. Same band still plays every Tuesday.
Very cool.
And it's a circus. And so we really benefited from the fact that we could open back up on Tuesday and it was like a Friday night. It was just banging. So I think that was part early on that when we opened back up, it was game on for 5 days and then we were done. And there was no days where it was kind of meh. It was just good. Now it's tempting to want more when 5 days are just great. It's tempting to want more. And it's been, my wife reminds me of our deal, so it doesn't matter. But knowing what you don't have to do, and it's I think for our staffing, everybody loves not having to work on Sunday. They just love it. They know, the couple days a year we are open. Oh, you'd think it was the worst thing. You'd think they were going for a root canal. So I think it's been important for us keeping long-term staff. I mean, they just really appreciate it.
That is a big deal. And I personally think it is a big part of retention. There's a lot of things that go into staff retention. But actual days off are a good thing.
And days off when you want to take a day off. You get Wednesday off. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Everybody else will be working. That's the thing is like, if you have, especially in the service industry, if your day off is when everybody else is working, well, that kind of sucks. If you want to spend time with family or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. In the conversation that we're having the other day, you had mentioned that you're a strong believer in the 3-legged stool when it comes to operations. What did you mean by that?
Well, obviously, product, service, atmosphere, right? Without one of those, that stool falls over. You can have great product and a nice atmosphere, but if your service sucks, that will just put everybody in a foul mood. I mean, if you don't have great service, and then if you have great service and a great atmosphere and your product sucks, who wants to be there, right?
Sure.
You can have good service. Probably atmosphere is the one that you can get away with most. If you have good service and good product, well, if the atmosphere is meh, you probably can. That's probably the most malleable leg on that stool.
Sure.
But being comfortable. I mean, I always think about like if you go into, and even it's different even in Traverse City. If I go into Traverse City and I sit down at the bar and I start talking to people next to me, they think you're a mental patient. Like, if you're not just sitting there on the phone, on Untapped, letting the world know how important your opinion is on some crappy beer or something. You don't just talk. So our bar is very small and tight as far as like I have seats just stacked together. There's no backs on the seats and it's tight. And so we have a great mix of locals and out of towners, guests, non-locals. And if you sit at the bar, you're going to be in a conversation with people. Like you are just going to be talking to people. It's a very social place. And if you go sit at the bar and you strike it up with somebody, you're going to have another beer. You go to a place that's one and done. The bartender doesn't want to talk to you. Nobody wants to talk to you. You feel like you're, in line at the doctor's office or something. And why are you staying for another beer? So if you're entertained at the bar, you'll stay. outdoors. We have picnic tables. We have community seating. And oftentimes, I mean, you'll have a couple that comes in and they're looking around. You always tell people they don't know their way around or whatever. And there's music out back or whatever. If people have room at their table, they'll invite people, sit down.
Yeah.
Well, automatically you feel better. You feel like, hey, this place is all right. You got a good, it's kind of like when you walk into a place and you're greeted as soon as you walk through the door.
Yeah.
You might have to wait, a few minutes for a beer because the bartender's busy. But the fact that they acknowledged you right away, that sets the entire tone for the whole trip. And people don't, the days of craft beer where, they're going to come here and drink it because we're craft. Mm-hmm. Those are over. Yeah. People got choices. I mean, if you're sitting there and drinking a beer at a place and you're like, I could have just went over to the party store and got a 6-pack and drank it on my tailgate. And at least I could have listened to the music I want to listen to because this place sucks. Like, think about your place. Does your place suck? Is there a reason people want to go there? What's the thing?
So I have a question for you, Matt, and don't try to be modest when you answer this question because I have a suspicion. Because what you're talking about is you're talking about something cultural. And so sometimes that can just be like part of what the community is, small community, tight knit. But sometimes things can also follow the personality of somebody who is frequently in the establishment, right? So when you say to me, if you sit at the bar, you're talking to everybody. I think that's really interesting. What do you attribute that to? Because I think most places would be dying to have that happening at their place, right? Is that because you have, maybe especially early on, you kind of set up the, like, hey, I'm in chatting with people, I'm behind the bar, or I'm on the other side, having those conversations. What do you attach that to?
It's culture. It's culture of if you're why. I always say this. Why do people sit at a bar? If you come into a place, why do you sit at the bar? You sit at the bar because you don't want to sit at a table. You want to be engaged in some fashion. You want to. So having staff that engage, you talk to people. Somebody who's sitting there on their phone, and if a bartender thinks that their only purpose is pouring drinks and that's it, that ain't it. Their purpose is to entertain. You have these things now where you go and order. What is that? You can order and you just punch in a thing. And
QR code.
Why am I there?
Yeah.
What's the point of me being there?
Yeah.
I could be anywhere. Why am I paying $6 for a beer? Or God knows what, $7, $8 some places, whatever.
Yeah.
What's there? So when you have, and it's culture, like it's how we behave. So if somebody joins a team and you're not, we rarely ever hire more than a couple people a year. So then they come into that culture and they understand it because there is a culture. If you get new staff every year, well, then what's that called? How is that a culture, right? And also having those locals at the bar and they set a tone, right? A welcoming tone. If their tone is welcoming, it's a welcoming tone, right? We wouldn't put up with if their tone wasn't welcoming. We tell them to get out. So just being friendly. So if you sit at the bar and like, how hard is it to ask somebody, hey, where are you guys from? Yeah. Get them talking. And then get them talking to somebody else so you don't have to talk to them. Yeah. I think he was from that way. Then you get them talking and you're out. You don't have to, and then people sit there and say, yeah, I'll have another one. The amount of people, when I stand at the outdoor bar, we have an outdoor bar that services a lot of product. We have our top 6 beers and then 1 cider out there all summer long. The outdoor bar is, it's just boom, pints. The amount of people I hear that they come up to the bar and you say they are going to get a beer and they're like, I had a tab, but I closed out. I closed out. What'd you close out? I thought we were leaving and we ran into some people. And I'm getting another beer. that happens nonstop.
Yeah,
where it's because you do have that logo. So you have, in some places, you have the, I call it the Mackinac Island effect.
Mm.
Okay, so nobody's from Mackinac Island, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they hire staff, and you have new staff every year, whatever you're working at, the Pink Pony or whatever you're working. And then everybody that is in there is not from there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the culture?
Yeah.
How can you have a culture when it's all new people every day? It's
Mm-hmm.
just different, you know. And so if you don't have that core, you know, if you're a place that locals won't go to, so you only get the vacationers, what's the culture? It's like going to the mystery spot, whatever. What's the culture? So you really need that. And that's why when you know, you don't want to do things to alienate. Yeah, the big money is in the summer when you have the influx of people, but you got to remember how you got there.
Mm-hmm.
So it kills me when we get people coming from like Chicago or wherever, downstate, Detroit area, whatever. And you tell them, you know, they order 3 beers, and you tell them how much, and they're like, "Oh, is that for all 3?" You're like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh," and I die a little bit inside because we're reasonable. I mean, we're still, you know, our blonde ale's $5 plus tax. For a pint. You know, $5.50, $6. We're cheap. We're probably the cheapest around in the beer world.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful. You don't want. So if you have a tap room, right, and you're full, and you say, "Wow, I've got room to raise my prices because we're full," you know, we can really, you know, and you know, you're raising prices for the sake of raising prices. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to understand that. So if you raise your prices 10%, and there's 10% less people, you're still even, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not, because those people serve a purpose. Those people make it the place to be, right? And if you start looking around and say, you know, I don't feel like this is the place to be anymore, that's not good. So you got to be careful with your pricing that you don't push people away and you lose that momentum of the crowd, because the crowd has huge value. You know, even when you're driving by, you know, you always know those restaurants or those places where you're like, you know, how can that place stay open? Like, I never see anybody there. You know, it's like Jerry Seinfeld and Babu Bot, you know? He's looking over at it. He's like, nobody goes in that place. And he was like, I'm scared to go in there. I'm worried I'm going to end up being partners with a guy. You know? I mean,
for sure.
But there's all those places where you don't want to go in because there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And then there's places where you're like, gosh, I got to get there, man. There's a ton of people there.
For sure. For sure. So you started touching a little bit on kind of some draft selection type stuff and lineup stuff. So what are your thoughts on building, you know, because I get that question, you know, what would I be doing with my beer lineup if I were starting a brewery today? How do you kind of, what's been the sweet spot for you with the beer lineup and offerings that you have?
Well, I think you have to, you know, I remember the founder's line, "We brew the beer we want to drink."
Yeah.
And that's great. And I think there was a time and place for that. It doesn't matter what I care about. It does not matter. First of all, I think drinkability of beer is way overlooked. You know, it's the session IPA versus the, you know, 8%. I mean, there's brewers that feel inferior if they're making beers that are not, you know, high gravity, or, you know, this one's real low, you know, like, dude, we're in the business of selling beer. And if you have a place that's a good time, you drink more beer. Like, if you like that song, you're drinking beer faster, right?
Yeah.
So drinkability. So like, we opened with 6 beers on tap. I think we had just blonde, amber. We had a wheat, like a summer wheat. We opened it in June. A stout, an IPA, and something else, whatever.
Classic lineup. Classic lineup. Yeah.
You want to have a legit IPA, right? You're judged on every beer guy going to come in. Well, let me taste your IPA. And if it's a joke, like nobody's judging you on your blonde, right?
Yeah.
If you go out Untapped and you see a blonde that's got higher than a 3.5, it's a blonde, you know?
Yeah.
But so it is what it is. But 20% of our sales is blonde ale. I mean, that's, you know, the guy who comes over, has a few beers, he likes that, goes across the street to the general store, gets a case of Miller Lite, and goes home, you know?
Yep.
And that's okay. Like, it's okay that you know what you like at a place, right? I don't go to McDonald's for the lobster, right? And so it's not what we have. But I like lobster, and I like McDonald's. It's okay, you know?
Sure.
So now, you know, refining recipes and stuff, by having a lot of beers that are between 5 and 6%. You know, you start getting north of 6% on stuff that's other than IPAs. I mean, nobody needs a 7.5% brown, for crying out loud. I mean, what, you know, why are you doing that? I went to a place the other day, and I mean, they had 4 beers, 3 were 8%.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got stuff to do later. Like, what?
I'm giving you the rest of my day when I order this pint. You understand,
like,
right? Yeah.
You want a day drinker coming in, and then you got 8% beers. I mean, so having beers you can recover from, you know? So yeah, I mean, 20% of our sales is blonde ale. 13% is our Jungle Fungus, which is like a half-ass session IPA. 5.2%. It's a legit IPA. It's just not high ABV. And people drink it like it's going out of style. It's a great beer. Then we'll have, you know, bigger IPAs, more traditional American. We do quite a few dark beers. Our water profile, which we have never done a thing to, I might add, like never monkeyed with.
Yep.
Really makes good IPAs. It's hard water, real hard. Right? It smells too. It's like if you you got to filter it. It has a bad smell. It flashes off. It flashes off in the liquor tank, like it.
Sure, yeah.
But like you have to. So here's a funny one. So we've got outdoor, like those igloo coolers, like the Ronald McDonald type, right?
Yeah.
That used to have the orange drink in it all the time. I don't know where that came from, because McDonald's never sold it, but it always had it's something to do with Ronald McDonald. Anyway, so we got some of those coolers out on the patio, and if you pour the water into those coolers from the water filter tap, then it's great water. But if you just go right from the sink tap, it smells.
Yeah.
And so so I would be just filling up from the sink tap, and some of the girls are like, "Why are you filling up from there? Fill it up. That stuff stinks." I'm like, "What?" So, like, well, people ain't gonna want to drink that. I'm like, it's free. I'm like, I don't want to sell water. I want to sell beer. I'm like, I'm not encouraging them to drink this stuff. Anyway, so, but they won, and they put the stupid filtered water in it. Anyway, but yeah, it just does not. It just got a little.
Yeah.
Something. So,
for sure.
So yeah, so we do an imperial that we put on seasonally, and still some one-offs. You know, a lot of one-off IPAs. I feel like the IPA space, that's where we mess around a little bit more. Because face it, if like you've got a good amber, like you don't want to mess with it. Like the people who drink amber are not drinking it because they're super interesting, right?
Yeah.
They're drinking it because they just want a solid amber. So you figure out your amber, that stays. So a lot of beers have to just stay. You might tweak things to, you know, make them a little bit better, but
sure.
But the IPA is where the customer's like, "Hey, what do you got different for an IPA? Oh, we got this. Oh, okay." You know, and then the standby. So you kind of got to balance, like all those things. But like we can't even brew like a lager, like a Vienna lager, and get the Busch Light guys to drink that. They want the blonde.
Sure.
The blonde
Yeah.
is just easier. It's kind of not sharp around the edges. And I mean, we're very fortunate that our easiest beer to brew is our number one seller too.
Sure.
I mean, it's simple. So that's nice.
Absolutely. So you also mentioned, you kind of touched on a little bit before, but let's talk about the role of connection to community or community involvement, and how that's helped you create a stable business.
So I moved to Lake Ann in essentially the late 90s. Had a lot of connection here. My brothers lived in this town since the 80s. They were both in construction, doing masonry, excavating and stuff. So they got to know a lot of people in town. I moved here. I got pretty involved with the community. I'm on our township board right now. Just do different stuff for different volunteer stuff I had done without any idea that we'd end up doing a brewery. So, but when it came time to do this project, because I was well known in the community already, and I'm not going to say well liked, but you can say that.
Known at least.
But people at least knew what we were, my wife and I were about and everything. And so there was less of a hurdle to open a brewery 152 foot from the United Methodist Church. And because we had already had a relationship with them. We already had a relationship with so many people. So, and then once we opened, of course, you want to be the, you try to be the hub, or you try to be the, if there's a fundraiser or something you need money for, we try to help out with that. We do stuff with the church. We do stuff with the historical society. The church asked us during COVID. Must have been 2020, and we had our outdoor space. We had heaters and we had our lights and our stage or whatever. I mean, they did their Christmas Eve service in our beer garden there, and they had their 100th anniversary as the church, and they held it at the brewery on a Sunday when we were closed, and they had a big thing for their own thing, and that type of stuff goes a long way, We use their parking lot is used for our business in the village in the evenings, and it's just a give and take, and it works out good. But
I do think sometimes people can, I don't know if it's undervalued or whatever, but not quite fully understand, how it is. And you have some qualities of a buddy of mine that I grew up with. He grew up in Everett with me, but he's a small town guy. You go out to a small town bar with him. You go to the bathroom. You come back out, and he's slapping the guy in the back next to him, and they're both laughing like he's made a best friend for life in the 2 minutes you were in the bathroom. So you strike me as one of those guys that does make those connections, and I do think, it can go overlooked, right? As ultimately, in a lot of ways, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create regulars, right? Regulars are a very good thing. Regulars can bring other people in when they come in and visit, all these different things, and I think that authentic connection with people is something that can put you on a road to regulars much more quickly than you can in another way.
Well, if just think about, like, if you got to go out and try to find a new customer all the time because you've upset your old customers or whatever, that's a nightmare, and you're going to run out of customers. Like, you're going to run out, So you have your, there's the, I divide everybody into kind of this, right? You have your regulars, you have your people that might be our 4 out of 5 days they come in, right? And then you have your 3 days out of 2 weeks, or you might have once a month they come in, or they're once every 2 months, or they're once a year when they come up. You have all these different people that come in different amounts of time, and it all puts together, right? Or you have people that they only come in when this band is playing, but they come in, and trying to get as many people, get as large of a group to draw from is just going to make your life easier, I mean, and not doing things that people find objectionable, right?
Sure.
And even just the smallest stuff, like, and I think off screen, we got into just discussing about how, so many businesses love to wade into politics. Like, why would you want to get involved in that? Like, that's not what we do, right? Like, what we do is, it's the Billy Joel song, Piano Man. I know it's me they've been coming to see to forget about life for a while.
Yeah.
And you want to be an escape and just a place that you can go and be like, you know what? Everybody, everywhere you go is terrible, but not here.
Yeah.
Well,
it's interesting now that I'm doing this full time, and I'm essentially doing a podcast a week. I'm talking to a lot more people. So I do have, one of the disclaimers that I give people. I'm like, we're generally PG-13, and also we kind of shelve politics. And the reason is and what you kind of hit on is you could look at it from a very practical standpoint and say, I don't want to offend one half of the country or the other half. But the thing that I end up coming down on more with that is I want to break from it. It seems like there's no escape from it. And in my mind, if you're going out for a beer, or if you're going to listen to a beer podcast, you're going to get your politics somewhere else. In me, I like to, for me, when I listen to stuff, when I'm trying to learn stuff or find out something about what somebody else is doing, I just want to enjoy that time. That's like that window of time of my commute where I can unwind. I don't need to be getting wound back up again. So yeah, just kind of this space where people can be.
You want to walk around like you're on like Crossfire on CNN all the time? Everybody's just arguing, and I mean, like, I don't have to have a political position on everything. Sure. I'm not running. I guess I am a office holder, but sure. I still don't know what's going on in that aspect. People say, "What's going on in the township?" Like, I don't know. But yeah, I think to be able to, I think it's more important than ever, to be able to have that space where you're just like, yeah, you know what? Just come on in here and have some beer. And we can argue about beer if you want.
Sure. For sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It'd be like if you only had 2 beers on tap, and then you told people they couldn't have one, and so they only have to have one when they come in. Like, that's not
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I gotta tell you, one of my favorite Matt Therrien stories is I was chatting with you. I think maybe you stopped by and were maybe visiting me at Crankers, because that was the first place that I was making beer professionally.
Oh yeah. On our way to the beer festival, I think.
Yeah, and then you stopped by and we were talking, and you told me, I think it was this occasion, but regardless, you said that early on you were interviewed by a local magazine, and they wanted to know, like what your goal was with, opening up the brewery. And you said that you felt like maybe they were a little disappointed in your answer. Can you run that story back for us?
Well, since then, I think I've probably had a lot of those, encounters, but and I feel like it's like sacrilege to the brewer community if you said, well, why'd you get into this? I'm like, I thought we could make some money. I mean, If you don't, it won't work, right? And so, I wasn't in it for the art. The art comes after, right? Like, I think we can make this a viable business in this town. I think it'd be good for the town. It'd be, if it worked out, it'd be fun for us. It kind of reminds me of that line from, what's the line with, or what's the thing with the bus that wouldn't stop? The movie,
Sure.
the movie.
I like how you're demanding that I know it.
Well, yeah,
but no,
you're my only guy.
It's Speed.
Speed, yeah. And
Keanu Reeves.
No, Keanu Reeves goes. He asks him why he's doing it. Dennis Hopper, why you're doing it. He goes, well, Jack, I guess I wish I had a nobler reason, but it's just really for the money.
Exactly. Exactly.
But and I think if you depart from the basic economics, which a lot of places have, in their quest, that things get a little wonky. Like, I mean, it's you gotta understanding that sweet spot of beer sales, right? Like, and we talk beer prices. That's a big thing for me, is beer prices and making sure you hit that sweet spot. And yeah, you can make more money if you charge more, but are you going to lose people? Are you going to be, everybody's gone to a place where you're there and, you're looking at the thing and you're like, do I want another beer? And when you're thinking about the money, that's when we got a problem.
Yeah.
Like, if you're like, gosh, how much was that? Yeah. Like, what did I have here? Was I being entertained? Like, did this beer entertain me?
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine, he worked at a local brewery in Traverse City, and he talked about, he's a brewery owner now, but he talked about when this brewery raised their prices, and it was notable when they raised their prices, and this was probably been in 2010 maybe. And he goes, I watched all the people that came in the afternoons go from opening up a tab to one and done. And I mean, unless you're like, the tanks are empty and you don't have, it's a true supply and demand issue. You don't want to be where either they're one and done or they ain't even there. They come, in Lake Ann, they come down the hill from work, and if they're like, nah, you don't want that. That nobody being at your place can snowball as well.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that's not.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, listen, we're going to wind down here a little bit, but I do like to ask folks. One of the things that I like to do with the channel is kind of have a bit of a career outlook on it, because I think sometimes we can have a bit of a job outlook as brewers in this industry, and I want to think a little bit bigger picture with it too. So, for you, if you could go back in time and have a beer with a younger version of yourself, say the young man in his 20s, what would be the life/career advice that you would drop on that younger man?
Life/career advice that you would drop on me as a young man. I would say, when you find out what you're doing, like when you find out what, you'll know when you hit your niche of whatever you're doing in life for career-wise, and don't stop until you figure it out. Because when you do figure it out, you'll have a lot of fun. And it may take a while. It took me a while. If life's too short to do stuff you don't like to do. If you're working and every day it's a drudgery, do something else. Like, that's not any way to to live. And I was fortunate that I always kind of liked what I did, but I really enjoy this. Like we're the waking up every day and trying to figure out what's the next thing. And I mean, it's the craft beer world is more challenging now than it probably was 10 years ago, for sure. But with that is the opportunity as well. So, I think that's what I'd say. Keep doing something until you really like it.
Love it.
But keep doing something the whole time.
Sure.
Don't just sit around and wait for your ship to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything big that you have coming up that you want to tell people about? I know we might be moving towards some warmer weather up there. I am a little bit spoiled down here compared to you guys.
The sun is not out now, and it's snowing again. So that's what I see out the window there. We've got this June will be our 10th anniversary. We've got just about to drop our summer music calendar. In October, if all things go right, we are gonna. We've been using a 30 by 40 Four Seasons tent for overflow since COVID. That we actually have a stage in, and we do live music. It's heated, and we do live music out there all winter and everything. And it works well, but we're going to be breaking ground hopefully in October on a new Four Seasons music pavilion that'll be also heated, and hopefully have that done before Christmas. So that's a big thing. I'm more excited about this than I've been than I have been on anything in several years, as far as business wise. And I think that in the way the market looks for beer, you've got to be always looking ahead at what is your attraction to bring people to your place, because the days of you go and you're there and you are drinking a beer and there's nothing going on, they don't cut the mustard anymore.
Yeah,
you got to have there's got to be something there.
Very true. Very true.
But I'm optimistic in some regards. I think we're going to see a lot of brewery closures in the next couple of years. But you know what? I mean, we're in a foreclosed building, a foreclosed restaurant, and from the ashes rises a phoenix. So back when you used to be back when you'd have to wait a year to get your new brewing equipment because it was so back ordered, and you could sell your brewing equipment for more than you paid for it before you ever took it delivery. Because remember those days? And I think if a brewery wanted to if they had the need to expand in the next for on-premise sales, I think there's going to be some great opportunity for some equipment that you can buy for pennies on the dollar. So absolutely.
Well, listen, Matt, I appreciate you taking time. I knew one of the things I struggle with as somebody that runs a podcast, sometimes I have to worry that I'm going to be talking more. I want to be featuring my guest. And you were very easy to feature today.
I didn't even need you here. I could have just kept talking. I got another hour and a half in me. I can keep going.
Well, listen, my bladder's not going to take it. But no, I think you're I think you're an interesting guy. You speak your mind, and I think you bring a very good perspective. Because I do think there people can lack some of that fundamental, some of the fundamental nuts and bolts, keep it simple stuff. And I think you have something very cool going on up there. So just so you know, you can go ahead and follow Lake Ann Brewing both on Instagram and on Facebook. I believe it's just Lake Ann Brewing. But
Lake Ann Brewing Co.
Lake Ann Brewing Co. on Instagram. But yeah, go ahead and give them a follow. If you ever end up getting up to that Traverse City neck of the woods, please make sure to stop by there. I want to thank all of you that are listening right now. If you listen pretty close to real time, next week I'm going to be talking to Jessica Young, and we're going to be talking. She's a hop creep researcher. So it's going to be some cool technical stuff that we're going to be digging into. But Matt, I want to thank you once again. Please stick on the call even when I jump off, just so I can chat with you real quick. And to the rest of you out there, be good to your people, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Absolutely, man.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being on.